to order this meeting of the Monroe County Justice Response Committee on Monday, November 21st, 2022. And the first item on our agenda is land updates. And I'm very sorry to say that the City Plan Commission forwarded our rezone request to the City Council with a negative recommendation, which was to a very large extent based on technicalities of the sort that the City Council doesn't really need to worry about. So I think it'll still get passed. I think it'll probably be passed by the City Council, or at least I'm hoping. I don't want to be premature here. But even if it does, one of the things that we hadn't quite realized is that jails are only conditional uses everywhere in Bloomington, which means that we're going to have to take it to the BZA, the Bloomington Board of Zoning Appeals, once the City Council makes a decision. So our timeline has been set back a little bit, but we hope not irretrievably. Yes. Yes, and then the next thing I wanted to bring up is the...
Is your microphone?
Barely.
I did have a question. Is that good? Thank you. I did have a question about agenda item 1. Is this a good time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in terms of the land updates, I did have a question about the Thompson property. The Bloomington City Plan Commission mentioned an 85-acre parcel of land already owned by the county that is closer to downtown and to supportive services, that's actually already been rezoned conditional use for a jail. And
jail would still be a conditional use.
A conditional use, correct?
Yeah.
Which is greater than what we have for the Fullerton Pike location, correct? Right.
It's true for both of them.
Except the land behind Catalent, that 85-acre parcel of land has already been conditionally zoned for a jail, at least according to the City Planning Commission.
Oh, yeah, it probably has.
And so my question is about that property is, are we considering that property for the jail in light of the fact that, first of all, it's 85 acres, which is pretty substantial, especially considering the Fullerton Pike is 87, but we can't build on all of it due to slope, karst features. In addition, it'd be greater walking access, which is not just closer to established transit lines, but also in talking about walking access, we're talking about sidewalks for safety when people are accessing the justice system. It's also closer to supportive services than the Fullerton Pike, and it's within city limits. So I was just wondering about that property and whether or not it's being considered for the jail.
That property has been considered for a jail in the past. A lot of it is not buildable, and I'm guessing about 6-8 months ago, we signed a contract with Catalent, who possibly want to buy a significant part of that. And we promised that we would keep it available for 2 years. So it's really not available right now. And besides that, that's an area that's very much surrounded by residential housing, which obviously makes it much harder because people don't really want a jail right in their neighborhood. And we also are hoping to use a portion of it for affordable housing. So we have made other plans with that property. Catherine?
I just want to state that I think, and again, speaking personally and not on behalf of the Board of Judges, I think it's essential that any new jail be built in the city center where it is going to be accessible to services. And I recognize that that will put it in the near other residential areas. For many years, I lived right downtown, about 4 blocks from where the jail is currently. I don't believe that had a deleterious effect on people living downtown. I don't believe it's kept people from living downtown. If we're going to build a new jail and it's going to have all the services that we are talking about, it's got to be somewhere where people can easily get to it to help provide those services. That's my thought. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would have to say that it's a little different choosing to move in close to a jail than having a jail come into the middle of your community. Those kind of affect people a little differently. But at this time, the Fullerton Pike property is what we're considering. We recognize there are problems with it. I just want to let you know that if we can't work out the problems with the Fullerton Pike property, we will probably have to move to a property out in the county, which in many ways might turn out to be a lot easier. And no further than the Fullerton property, but with certain disadvantages. And well, transportation is what we would have to really solve for the county, but that is a soluble problem. So that's not our main concern right now.
So it's the position of the commissioners that even if the Fullerton Pike Parkway falls
I'm
through-
sorry, I can't hear you.
Okay, so is this better? Okay, so it's the commissioner's position that even if the Fullerton Pike land that falls through, because it needs to be zoned in order for the agreement to go through, that the county commissioners would still not consider that 85-acre parcel of land that is closer to downtown. I just thought it would save $10 million, which we might need for services, for
As
example.
I've said, it's not available to us for 2 years.
So all 85 acres were going to go to Catalent, is that right?
Probably not all of it, but most of the buildable part would. And the thing is that we simply wouldn't know for 2 years whether or not that's available to us. Catalent might decide to go somewhere else. They might decide to stay here and go ahead and build out on that property, which is, in their opinion, very ideal for them because there's a great deal of affordable housing available right around there. We believe that affordable housing is going to be a much better use of that property. We kind of have to balance a lot of things besides just the jail.
And I understand the commissioners are dealing with a lot of things to balance. I was just in keeping with our goals of a different approach. I think when we talk about the jail, we're also talking about people who are members of our community. And I know they'll be close to a residential area, but people in the jail are also members of our community. And they're our neighbors, they're community members, family members. And I realize there's a great access that's available to supportive services for everyone in the community, not just people at the jail, if you're going to locate those at the Fullerton Pike. And I was just worried about that access as well.
We have every intention of making it accessible. It could easily become a bit of an employment area. We can envision a number of supportive services being able to relocate there. As I say, there are problems anywhere we go. We aren't going to have a right in the middle of Bloomington jail at this point because it's not actually very usable. As a matter of fact, it's a little unusable. So it's got to move. We would like for it to move to a big enough property so that other services can be located there or close to there. At this time, there's no development around there. It has easy access to I-69 and to Monroe Hospital, both of which could make a big difference. So we've looked at all of this pretty closely for a long time. And this is a decision that the commissioners make. When it comes to owning property and owning capital, it's like a jail. Yeah, Dave, did you want to say something? You need to come up to a microphone. Okay.
Sam and I have been to quite a few different jails, and to be honest, we've never been to one that's essentially located as ours is currently. Everyone that has had to build a jail has went outside. And it's just because of that issue of, I think what Lee was trying to say is that it's different to move towards a nuisance as it is a nuisance to move towards you. And it's like the Bloomington Speedway. It's been there for 100 years. You can't be mad if you move there. But if somebody wanted to put a new Bloomington Speedway in your neighborhood, you could definitely throw a fit.
Yeah. Yes, Judge Croce.
Sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing some people. As far as, I was just thinking, because we went out to look at the Fullerton Pike. Currently we have for employees like a parking garage. There's essentially no parking out there. I didn't know, I'm sure you've thought of that, but I was just wondering what the plan for parking is out there, because there'll be, not only the need for employees, but also visitors and that sort of thing.
Yes, we've very much taken that into account. That space for parking has been something that we've talked about right from the beginning. We also believe that in constructing the building and the parking lot, we can solve a number of the drainage problems right there that the neighbors are complaining about. It's drainage problems that was caused by I-69. And we think we can probably fix those for them. So there are benefits to going there also. And as I say, it's as we have been looking closely for probably a year and a half. And if we are to locate it in the city, this is probably the only property that we can use. So we would like to locate it in the city, but if we can't use this property, then we'll have to make other arrangements. Catherine?
And again, just for myself and not on behalf of the Board of Judges, I worry very much about the economic impact on downtown. Thank you. Can you hear me better? Again, I want to make a few points here on the record and publicly before we leave this topic. I recognize, of course, that the commissioners bear this decision, and I'm speaking only for myself and not on behalf of the Board of Judges. I worry very much about as an almost lifelong Bloomington resident, about the economic impact on downtown if the courts and the public defenders and the prosecutors and probation and then eventually all the law firms leave downtown. I think that's going to have a huge impact on downtown Bloomington. And I recall to your minds the fight that we had in the early 80s about whether the court should be downtown and what we should do with the courthouse. And I think we made the right choice then, and I encourage us to think carefully about it now. I worry very much about folks getting released from jail out in the middle of nowhere with no services, literally on the side of an interstate. I worry about the cost to the county of transporting inmates to their trials if we don't co-locate from the get-go. I worry that we will lose rather than gain community involvement if we are that far out of town. For example, in protection order hearings, I have people come in from Middleway House and observe almost every protection order hearing. I think that's critical. We have volunteer mediators for civil cases. We have law student clerks for every office, the judges, the public defenders, the prosecutors, let alone community programming for the jail. The site is beautiful. I think it has plenty of room. It's noisy with the highway, so it would need building planning to shield road noise from any outdoor use areas. Critically for staff, I think there are 0 restaurants nearby and we will need a food court or cafeteria. I have a lot of concerns about it not being downtown.
Yeah,
I don't think it's a good
we've
idea.
Already thought about a lot of that, but Julie, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just feel like we're getting bogged down in something that we've made a commitment to purchase based on approval. So this is really kind of Monday morning quarterbacking at this point. And I hear every one of these concerns. I understand it, but we have to envision the fact that Fullerton Pike isn't even built yet, and it will be built by the time the jail's built. And so that's going to change that whole area anyway. no matter whether there's a jail there, a justice center or not. There's, as Commissioner Jones said, there's problems no matter where we go. There's going to be something we have to overcome, and we understand that. And we're prepared to do that. Yes, we thought about parking. Yes, we thought about access to services. Yes, we have. We appreciate it. It's just right now we're in a holding pattern, and if we need to open this conversation up again, let's open this conversation up again. But right now, we can't change a decision because it's already been made, and we're just waiting on the outcome. Thanks.
Thank you, Julie. May we move on to the next thing at this point? Last week or 2 weeks ago, Commissioner Thomas and Councilmember Crosley had proposed guiding principles for us to keep in mind as we're working on this. I'm going to pass these around again. And if everyone is okay with them, I would like to know, and I will include them on our agenda from now on, to make it clear exactly how we're trying to think about it and how we're trying to move forward.
And for those in the public here, we did pass them around. If there's not enough copies, simply let us know and we'll get more to you.
And I did pass these out last week. Have you all had a chance to look at them? You can look at mine. Does anyone have any or let me give you a few more minutes to look at them. So does anyone have any objection to these or anything you'd like to add to them? And we'll take public comment at the end of the meeting.
I wasn't sure, but better on restoration and the plan and adding collaboratively and really process.
Do you mind if I speak that in your words into the microphone? The request, this is for people on CAT, so you can hear as well. And in the audience, the request was to add to these guiding principles the words collaboratively, transparency, and public safety. Is that correct?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
technology.
That sounds
Collaboratively
good.
public.
Does anyone object to that? And does anyone have any problems?
Where specifically is that added? Just so we all know.
I'm sorry, I missed what you said, Julie.
Where is the proposal to add that language? Where, in what section, what area, what sentence? That'd be helpful to know.
I appreciate that. I think for collaboratively, I think that should be its own guiding principle because I think we should be working collaboratively in all areas. I think that'll have the best results, as well as transparency, I think applies to all of the actions we take here, especially with such important issues that we're dealing with. In terms of public safety, treatment is a priority over incarceration when appropriate, or it can be its own guideline, but I think we need to keep those three things in mind. Thank you.
Okay, Jen and Julie, do you want to add this to it? And if everyone else is okay with that, I will start including our principles on the agenda. If I can figure out enough room to get them on, I may have to reformat it a bit.
Yeah, I
So
would
that-
say, to April's point, yes, I do think that collaborative and transparency is, because hence the whole point of the committee. And I think it's important for us as a working group to make sure that we stay on topic with that. So I would not be opposed to adding that, and I think that's a good idea. So thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And then I think I'm going to skip around on our agenda a little bit because I don't know if we'll have enough time to get through everything on it today. And this is Allison Howland, who is with the Indiana Institute on Disability and the Community Collaboration. Can you remind me, please?
Sure. We are from the Institute on Disability and Community, but my center focuses specifically on collaboration and community coalitions. So our center is specifically the Center for Collaborative Systems Change.
Yes, and I think you all have seen the, well, and I think, yeah, they were handed out to you today. You have the proposal and I think also the scope of work. Yes.
And those documents are also available in the back for those in person.
Yeah.
And I believe that we will have those documents available online later today or tomorrow.
And would you like to talk a little about the scope of work?
Sure. First of all, really grateful to have the opportunity to meet with you and open to any questions. We were approached actually a few years ago to potentially look at getting some input from users of the criminal justice system. So persons who were, and started out sort of looking at persons who were currently incarcerated. We had some questions at that time as to whether that was a broad enough perspective, and really felt like it would be helpful to include the voice of those who were currently incarcerated, but also those who were currently on probation, and then also getting the perspective of persons who had successfully exited the criminal justice system, and particularly those who were active in whatever behavioral health or recovery journey they were on, and were not recidivizing or being rearrested. We also really thought it was important to maybe work with you, not to just have a snapshot in time, but to develop something that could be used continuously to look at as part of the data integration. Just to give you a little bit of background, our work has focused primarily on anything to do with community coalitions or systems of care. So multiple systems. Lots of the work that we've been doing recently has merged into recovery-oriented systems of care, of which the criminal justice system is definitely a key partner in that, and a key recipient of those services, particularly looking at aftercare and when they exit and go through reentry. We've also done some work with county jails who had problem-solving courts and some behavioral health, either mental health or substance use programming. And our bread and butter has really been evaluation of some of those programs, but we're also really interested and have provided some strategic planning and developing data integration to inform that strategic planning. So we're really excited about, I know you all have done a lot of work already, and we just want to make sure we've had an opportunity to look at the reports that some of the consultants that you brought in a few years ago, those recommendations, and we're really anxious to help facilitate operationalization of some of those recommendations and seek to really work with you to be a value add and not necessarily, we want to make sure we're not duplicating any of the efforts before and just moving us forward. So.
And I believe you had spoken a bit with SAMHSA, and it seems like they may be able to help us pay for some of this.
Yeah, no promises, but I did have some contact. A lot of the grants that we have done have been through the Substance Abuse and Human Services Administration federally. And someone from the Gaines Center reached out to me, and they specifically work on behavioral health initiatives in incarcerated populations, and also use the sequential intercept model. And they have some funding, no promises, but we could go through the process of requesting for funding from SAMHSA to actually help with some facilitation or some strategic planning, if that's something that would be helpful from an outside facilitator. They also do a fee for service and would be willing, if that's not an option, to customize it, because I said, you already have collected a lot of data and have a lot of recommendations around the intercept model and some priorities for implementation. So they would be able to work with you all to customize that to just give you what you need and not repeat some of the data collection that you've already engaged in.
Yeah, thank you. And they've also agreed to, Margie was talking a lot about MIM. I've forgotten her last name again. Something Bomert. Anyhow, she's working closely with the courts and probation, gathering data. And then Eric Gorman is working with the prosecutor's office gathering data, and Allison has said they hope to be able to pull all of that, work with them and pull all of that together so that we can have a public facing dashboard that tells everyone just where the system is at and how well we're doing things. So this is, and hopefully we will have the proposal on our November 30th, on the agenda for our November 30th meeting, when we'll sign the contract, except maybe not, because you do need to expand the proposal, don't you?
Well, depending on what you all are interested. I know Lee and I have had some conversations based on perhaps some other needs that you all are interested in, and perhaps expanding the scope of work a little bit. I think currently it includes just data collection related to a survey and or interviews, focus groups with individuals who are users of the system. I'll just keep it at that. If we're looking at data dashboards, which we are interested in and have done in the past, data integration to inform your decisions, we'd be more than happy to take a look at that. And I know Lee had also mentioned that you are all, at least I think the courts and probation and some of your services internally are looking at what they believe the needs, what the needs are for a new jail facility and what that should look like. And mentioned that perhaps they would like to do the same thing with some of the key community stakeholders or agencies that provide services to people who are currently involved in the system or to those who may be at risk for entering the justice system. So those are the types of things that we've also done. But we're more than willing to just, like I said, we want to make sure that we're working in tandem with the data and the results that you've already have already gathered, and that we are a value add and not duplicating any of that. So I want to make sure We can give you a pretty specific proposal, but want to assure you that we're just entering this, and we'll like to gather all of the background data. I know you all have done a lot of work already, and have a good understanding of your priorities and what you want to do with the data. So what I think it was really helpful to see these guiding principles, because I think they inform a lot about your priorities around treatment. But I think one thing before we want the data to be useful and actionable. I mean, dashboards are really interesting, but we want to make sure that they're meaningful to you. And I think first step would probably be mapping the data that's already gathered, establishing some of those gaps, and then understanding, where we're at as far as being able to integrate that data on an individual level. And I think that would sort of be a pilot, and then we'd be able to come back to you and understand what you would like to see, and maybe new data that needs to be collected, for instance, at the jail, and how best that data what dashboards would be most useful on an ongoing basis to drive decision-making.
Yeah, and this is very much what those of you who were at the substance abuse seminar, is that what it was
It's
called?
the Indiana Mental Health.
A mental health
Summit.
seminar. And it was emphasized over and over there that good quality data is really, really important. And it's almost impossible to figure out whether or not improvements you're trying to make are actually working without the good quality data. So hopefully we'll be moving forward with this rather quickly. And now I'm going to skip around on the agenda again, because I want to make sure we have enough time. Sam and David and Peter have put together a quick slideshow from their visit to the Franklin County Jail in Ohio. And something at the last minute, I found I couldn't attend, and I'm very pleased. Thank you very much, you guys, for doing this.
All right, everyone, my name is Peter Iverson. I am on the county council. Sam, you introduce yourself?
Sam Crow, jail commander.
And David.
David Gardner, maintenance.
So last week we went over to Franklin County, Ohio, home of the Ohio State University. And they just constructed a brand new jail. They contracted with DLZ, which is the same company that built the Hamilton County Jail that many of us went on. And we wanted to take you through a couple of pictures that we saw. I'll advance the slides, and gentlemen, as thoughts come to your mind, just go ahead and speak them into the microphone.
So one of the first things about this facility, it's much larger scale than what we could ever anticipate building. They're pushing 2,000 people in this facility. And, we have no plans of building anything that large. So I want to put that out there first. The first slide here is their Sally Port. And although it's a larger facility, this Sally Port just kind of made our jaws drop, especially since our Sally Port is like a sardine can. And every time we get our van fixed, it seems like someone runs it into the wall. Simply because of the design and the construction of our Sally Port. So this has enough space for 12 diagonal parking spots, either for law enforcement, for other agencies to come in and transport. It has enough space for larger vehicles like buses, larger transport vans. And then one thing that they said is think about the largest fire apparatus that would come into the jail. Make sure that your Sally Port is large enough for that largest fire apparatus. And that's what they've done here. So there's plenty of room for any vehicles that we have to come in. And I think it's just, again, it might be a little out of out of context for what we need, but I think we do need a larger sally port that has a better entrance exit.
I'll also point out, you can see the windows here. This is one of the reasons why this jail is really highly touted. They really try and get as much natural light into every single space they possibly can. And so even here in what is essentially a parking garage for emergency vehicles, there are windows. So this is a pretty a unique thing that they're doing, and it's starting to be modeled on other jails that are being built. Anything else on the arrival process?
I think one of the reasons we chose to look at this jail, even though it was enormous and so much bigger than anything we would want, this place has spent a long time, a lot of money in visiting jails all over the United States. So we felt like we could go there and learn from all the efforts they've already done. And they very much mentioned that a lot of their things they picked up when they went on all these visits were jails that were way smaller than them, but they learned how they were doing something really well. And so we hope that we could glean something from their process.
Thank you.
So this next section is where when someone is brought into the jail, this is where the jail staff brings individuals into the jail, and then the arresting agency then hands them off at this point. One of the things that I was struck by when I walked in here is how much this looked like a doctor's office. And if you didn't see the kind of the loops there, it was really interesting. The main feature on the ceiling that you see there is a massive skylight. They probably don't need the lights on here because there's so much natural light coming in.
And then one of the other features that I was very interested in when I first heard about this jail was the wood grain, the natural features. And as Peter said, it doesn't look like you're going into a jail when you enter. It looks like you're going into a doctor's office or a hospital setting, something that's much more friendly, friendlier environment than a jail environment generally looks.
This is the booking section. So when you arrive in jail, they collect your information. Who are you? What did you bring? That sort of thing. And in other jails that we've been to, this is a very sterile environment that looks very much like a dungeon. Walking in here, it seemed to me like we were walking into the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. There are very few cells in this room. In fact, the only cells that are in there you can see in this picture. Most of the seating that inmates do is out in the open here. Inmates generally, when they're in the booking process, are not behind a cell in this model of a jail. Anything else?
There's a lot of space for different groups to come in, like the pretrial release program, that have access for the medical staff to do evaluations there. Would have access for our mental health to have evaluations with the inmates before they go any further in the process. So there was just a lot of good features in there. And then you can see the cells. And if you look at the windows of the cells, especially the ones that would be on the right-hand side, they have a screen in them. So these screens were going horizontal, and then the ones in the windows on the other side were vertical. So you could house males in one side and females in the other side, and you don't have to worry about them looking at each other, seeing each other, giving shows, communicating in any way. So I thought that was really nice. And then you can still see. You can see inside the cells. You just have to make more of a concerted effort to see inside.
Another element of this picture that I thought was really interesting was that of staff safety. There are inmates that want to hurt staff, and the way that the lock is oriented on the door, where it's close to the edge, this is something I learned, was that actually keeps staff safe. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So there are food passes on each one of those cell doors. And in our current jail, the food passes are located in the direct center of the door. With these, they're offset. So when the tray pass is opened, the whole side of the door is open. So if you have to put someone in restraints, you can actually secure that inmate from the outside and they're going to remain secured even when the door's open. Right now, we would have to let that person loose. Once the door's open, then re-engage with the person. So for staff safety, it's a very ingenious design, and I've never seen that in any other facility.
They do something really interesting in this jail. They call it orientation. They've looked at their data and they've realized that the majority of people that are brought to the jail don't stay at the jail more than 72 hours. This cell block is for people who most likely will be gone in 72 hours. They said something, what, 90% of folks brought into the jail don't stay there longer than this time. So this particular cell block is just that. And I thought that was a nice touch because they're leaning into making sure that there's pretrial release. They're making sure that they're working with their judges and making sure that, you know, and the prosecutors, of course, that this is going well. And then also you see the focus on natural light. This is not done in a lot of jails. And also you see the nature murals up on the right-hand side there.
Peter, would you care to go back a couple slides to the booking area? And I want to bring up one point. So this is their booking area. To the right-hand side of that is it's like a soft booking area. And it's just seats. There's a wall dividing them. So you have males on one side, females on the other side. But one thing that was really nice that we didn't get a picture of was the green space. So again, as you're looking to the right, if you go straight down that little area, there's a big window and they have a green space. So they have plants, they can have a living wall. But it's just something different to look at. So you get that natural aspect of it. And you could see that from both sides. And again, they had it worked out so that the people on the right-hand side, the males couldn't see the females on the left-hand side and vice versa.
Everything there had a calming effect. I mean, let's face it, this is a very trying time for people to be incarcerated, to be forced to be in an area. And it really gave a sense of a waiting room at a hospital.
This is the general population wing. This is for individuals who have been sentenced maybe to longer terms. What you see here again is an emphasis on natural lighting, on natural murals, and then the doors along the right-hand side there. One of the doors is for medical staff to come in. So the contract the jail has is for doctors or nurses to come in. And there's also spaces for counselors to come in and address mental health issues. The individuals with severe mental health diagnoses or behaviors that are very challenging for staff aren't in this environment. They're in a separate environment that we'll talk about in a second.
And as it was mentioned at the far end of the picture, there's a picture in each one of the cell blocks, and it's of some type of a natural scene. There are restrooms located outside of the day room area or outside in the day room area. The showers are located in the day room area as well as in the cells. So it just gives a lot of different options and a lot of different features that we have and that I've not seen anywhere else. Yeah.
This was something that absolutely shocked me. This is their detox center. There is not a single cell in this entire center, in this entire section, excuse me. You see most of the furniture is movable. It's not bolted down. A lot of times in jail settings, you'll see furniture bolted down. Inmates here have the freedom of movement. They have, and there's also restrooms located just outside the shot. So they have the freedom to access those whenever they want in this group setting. This is very novel, at least as far as my limited understanding goes.
Yes.
And then I think we should move on to maintenance.
Yeah, this is something that's really keen, of course, to me, but all of the maintenance, probably 95% is able to be done in the chases without having to go into the blocks or into the cell itself. We have a lot of trouble now with our jail because of the age, but sometimes we just can't get into a cell. An inmate is, causing a flood or causing an issue. And because they are also agitated and have some issues, we can't get in there to work on that until we've gotten the proper team gathered up, and that could take anywhere from a half hour to an hour. Where we could walk behind the cell and shut the water off. And I'm sure that the judges here could appreciate or attest to why that would be so helpful. But not just water. This also has airflow. This has lights. It controls all kinds of things that will make an inmate less aggravated with their stay here. When you don't have hot water or cold water, or your light's not working, or your toilet's not flushing, it's also a very agitating thing when you're in there, which actually causes some of the extra issues that we have. So this just is incredible how much better it is than what we currently have.
And this was designed specifically so they could get a lift through the plumbing and all the features, so they could get up to the second story as well as the first. This was something that just sang to me. This building achieved LEED Silver status. So this building was built with top environmental concerns in mind. And as they were taking us through here, they said the one issue, and this is really interesting that this came up, is the one issue that kept them from being LEED Gold was a transportation issue. The bus lines don't go out to this jail. So yeah, there you go. However, they were working on the infrastructure around the jail and widening some roads so they could get bus stops there in the future. So it's not something that they won't have. It's something they don't have right now. This would be if Sam Crow right here were in Franklin County, Ohio, this would be his new office. So I just wanted to throw this in here just so that Sam could drool over what could be his new office. Of note, I think to this body in Franklin County, they have an interesting organizational structure. The Board of Commissioners has established a new department. That department is called the Office of Justice Policy and Programs. It is staffed by county employees who oversee numerous programs, both community programs, and also would work with consultants on data issues and things like that. These are the folks day in, day out, working on issues of justice, research, development, that sort of thing. Then they also have a board just like this board. They call it the Criminal Justice Planning Board. It is comprised of everyone, lots of folks that we have here, right? So it's a very similar board. And then they have a core team that oversees the design and implementation of everything. And in particular, they have a research and development major, a captain, and then 4 deputies, as you can see there, that do different things that are intentionally chosen to give them a wide breadth of knowledge. As we wanted to bring this to you today, we're not going to read all 23 things, but Sam and David, if something jumps out at you, what would it be on this list? So this is something that we've all kind of compiled, but when we got there, one of the new features that they were just building was the Rapid Resource Center. And this was located right outside of the release area of the jail. So they could go to that Rapid Resource Center and they could get signed back up for HIP for their insurance. They can make sure that they were getting their SSI. It was just anything that the community offered, I put some extra syllables in there, they had in that Rapid Resource Center, they were going to have. So I think that's a great feature and something that we should think about as well. Because we have a great community. We have a lot of resources in this community. especially if we're going to the Fullerton Pike where they might not have easy access, bring some of those resources to that area. So those people have the opportunity to get them before they get released. And then, talking about, again, this group, but the green, seeing the green spaces, the natural lighting, the biophilic design features, those were things that were really emphasized with this jail at both the National Sheriff's Association Conference and the American Jail Association Conference this year. So if it reaches that national level of both of those organizations where you have people from all over the United States, this is what is happening right now. And I think that's great.
I wanted to point out number 2 on this list. The commissioners over there at Franklin County deemed it important enough that staff, any county employee could have access to a brand new gym that they built on the outskirts of the jail next to the parking garage, as well as a cafeteria. And this jail is located in an industrial park kind of area of town.
One of the things that they really focused on, and the way that Major Thompson described this, is you have these magazines that come out, and they talk about the 50 best places to work at. Well, it's not because of what they do, it's because of how they treat their people. So there were some certain features that we really liked, especially myself, but the wellness center that was open to all county employees. They had a employee eating area, I guess, that could have like a short order cook in it, salad bar. Right now, my people have a space no bigger than all these tables put together. And then the restrooms at the other end of the building. So when you wash your hands, you have to walk and then walk all the way back. So that was something else. They had a lot of restrooms. But there was just a lot of things that they designed and put in there specifically to make staff's job a little bit easier.
All right. I think in the interest of time, we'll conclude. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any 3 of us or however you want to run the meeting.
Yes. Kate.
I just wanted to clarify that this jail is not operational right now. Is that correct? And do you know when they hope to go online?
You're correct. It's not operational right now. They have to have, and I think he spoke to you maybe about it. They have to have a certain policy, procedure,
Manual for the whole jail.
Yeah, manual for the entire new jail completed before their kind of like their jail inspector will allow them to open. So they're working on that, and hopefully that will be done by the first of the year.
So that was a report due to the Ohio Department of Corrections. And so it was a big lengthy document and they were still working on it. As we know.
That was one thing we noticed, and we also wanted to make sure that we were working on ours prior, so we did not run into that same loophole.
Very good.
Can I ask a couple of follow-up questions? So now we understand that they're not open. I guess a couple of questions that I have is, did they talk about like treatment facility or like, we see the detox, but what else besides detox do they have? And then are there any programs that are offered to the inmates as well that they talked about?
They had an entire area that was devoted to mental health. Their mental health tacticians were in that area 24 hours a day. And then they would progress from the worst all the way to where those inmates were going back into general population. Each one of the blocks had its own program room, so they could do whatever programs they needed to in that cell block.
Okay. And then I guess
There were 23 beds in the mental health wing.
20.
So it was not large. And we also discussed how in that particular community, there were other treatment options in the community, but they were not mature and they were starting to ramp up. So it was a challenge for them as well.
Okay. And then from my understanding, transportation is an issue that they have currently. So would they be, are they working on getting that right for when they open up in the first of the year, perhaps?
Well, as I said earlier, they're working on the infrastructure
Sure.
around trying to get enough area to where buses can have bus stops. As far as them transporting inmates, they would bring in buses and do bus loads of transports. So that's one thing that they had a big issue with as well.
Okay.
How about when people were released from the jail? Were they just put out the door or well, they obviously haven't been yet, but when they will be?
They actually had a really nice setup. All your booking was done on the right-hand side. All of your releases were done on the left-hand side. When they got released, they were released into a lobby that overlooked their parking area. There were telephones out there. They had access to those. They could make phone calls. They were still in the warm, so they could see when people came up to get them. And then that's where their rapid resource center was as well, was right outside the release area. And it was going to be connected to the release area.
I specifically asked whether probation had an office in the jail or are there other individuals engaged in that warm handoff, and they said there was not. So that's a challenge that they're experiencing as well. And again, there's no bus service out there, and this is on the edge of town. So they do have access to resources, but those individuals that are being released still have to secure a ride to wherever they're going. So that's another challenge.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, just as a follow-up, if they're having a transportation issue and we haven't, they're built, and they have that, and we haven't even broke ground or anything like that. I think as April and Judge Stafford had said, like these are things that we have to be mindful of when we are talking about this, or else we're in the same boat and the same predicament as they are. And that would be my personal opinion, a shame for us to do all of this and be in the same boat and have this nice little shiny place. When I say shiny with air quotes, because I don't want to relate anything related to correctional facility as shiny. But we're going to have a new place and we're going to have hopefully we'll have a plan, but it doesn't feel like there's a plan for people to be released. So I think that was just my comment.
Yeah, and I'd have to say that plan in particular, everything about this process is kind of chicken and egg, what comes first. And we are working on transportation right now. I don't think, since it's not even clear whether or not we're going to be able to buy this property, we have not finalized any transportation plans, but it's something that we're working on before we've even bought property. So, Catherine?
Thank you. What else is co-located at that campus? Do they have public defenders, prosecutors, the courts, probation there, or is it simply the jail?
At this time, it is simply the jail.
Because what I'm understanding is that most of the places we visited, it's simply the jail, and that's why it's more out in the county. The courts themselves of those locations have been more in city center. You already know the concern about co-location and the ongoing transportation costs that I'm concerned about. But I think that's something we need to take into consideration as we look at these location issues. Thank you.
You could tell they were having very similar conversations to what we've been having. I think there were 2 rooms that allowed for video court in the jail, but again, they're not open yet, so we don't know how well or how often those are being used.
And just to remind everyone, starting January 1, we're not allowed to use Zoom for court unless there is an agreement of the parties or good cause shown to the judge by order of the Indiana Supreme Court. So that is not up to us.
We had a conversation about that too. They were very shocked to hear that.
Yeah, I looked also, their problem is a little harder than ours on transportation. We are 4.5 miles from our city transportation to the Fullerton Pike. So it's a little smaller problem than they have. We would just need our bus line to run there, but 4.5 miles away doesn't seem like a stretch.
Well, and when I say transportation, I'm not necessarily just meaning bus line, I'm meaning of inmates. That's my concern for transportation is of inmates back and forth to court and of staff back and forth to the jail to meet with their clients, and of community resources from the city center to the jail for provision of those resources.
Yeah. And they do that currently. They have 2 facilities besides their new one. And they run a bus every day back and forth between, and that is, it's a large expense.
That's what we heard when Commissioner Thomas and I went to Kentucky, Kenton County, I think. They had the same situation of their jail was somewhat isolated. Courts were downtown. And every morning, anyone who was going to court that day was provided with a sack lunch, and they were all taken to a secure holding place where they spent the day. And at the end of the day, they were all brought back again. So this is a soluble problem, I believe. And yes, I believe Judge Fawcett has something to say.
I do. Thank you. I want to just make sure with them not having any other groups co-located, I think it's important to remember that Monroe County participates in the pretrial release program where inmates have to be interviewed and then they come up with the recommendation status about their release. So I think it is important to, as Judge Stafford said, that we are mindful of the fact that community corrections and or probation are going to need to be out there. So it's just something to keep in mind. And then I know at the planning meeting, I think it was noted that there was a local rule added that defendants do not have to attend court, and that is in fact inaccurate. We had an informal agreement that during the pandemic, to reduce the number of people coming and going from the courtrooms, defendants didn't always have to attend. But I want to be clear that there is no local rule. And as Judge Stafford said, as of January 1, we're getting away from the remote hearings at the direction of this Indiana Supreme Court. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd like to, that is a concern that they've come up with that ruling, but they do change their rulings at times. And the state as a whole is very supportive of this kind of endeavor. And so once it becomes obvious how important and helpful it could be, I wouldn't be at all surprised if that rule were changed. And we can certainly,
Not putting anybody on it.
no, but we can certainly lobby where we need to.
Did you get an estimate from the jail? Because you said it's not co-located with the court, about how much it will cost to transport inmates every day. I understand we'll have to do a fraction of that because of our population, but how much of an incurred cost does the county incur because the jail is not co-located and they're transporting people at least at 5 days a week?
That's a fantastic question. I didn't ask. Would you like me to shoot off an email and get that answer for you?
I think it'd be really helpful as the county is making the decision about co-location services. I know I've seen in our local documents that one of the buses in a different project was going to be about $90,000. So I was wondering how many buses would have to run.
How many FTEs?
Right. And then in addition, in between, if they're driving back every day, you're going to have vans that are going to transport and appropriate ones for security. I think it'd be helpful.
Yeah, we'll figure out a way to get that answer.
Well, and I'd like to remind you that our current jail is supremely inefficient and requires probably 3 times as much staff as a jail should need. So we can be shifting money around in quite a few different ways.
I think that'll be helpful because I know the jail is very understaffed at this point. So I think by 14 or 18, Commander Crowe, is that correct?
Excuse me. We were down 14, but fortunately we've hired some people.
That's great because I know we were struggling with hearings during certain blocks, bringing people down and trying to avoid those blocks because of some of the challenges we were facing with jail shortages.
We
Yes.
just had to cancel hearings last week in civil court because jail inmates weren't available because they had to take 2 inmates to the hospital.
Well, we aren't going to be able to do a whole lot about that probably. If inmates need to go to the hospital, they need to go to the hospital. And that would be the kind of
I
transportation.
wasn't suggesting we didn't take them to the hospital.
No, I
We have a
didn't think you would.
transportation need. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I understand that. And there are clearly going to be problems that are going to have to get worked out. I just want to make it very clear that there will be a new jail and it will not be downtown. And so it would be more helpful to actually help us solve some of these problems, most of which we are actually aware of. So, did anyone else go there?
Just 3 of us.
Oh, wish I could have gone. Okay, then, Kate, do you want to say anything about the Care Not Cages meeting we went to?
Sure.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
That's okay. It's last Saturday. There was a meeting in the local organization, Care Not Cages, and we received invitations, which was lovely. And it was good to go and hear what people were thinking about this conversation, and generally speaking, and the concerns that the folks in this organization had around building a jail, whether or not one was needed. We had some good conversations. Mostly I was there to listen. We did talk about and record ideas on services and needs in the community much more broadly than just what this conversation is. And that was really, it was really good. It was good to hear what folks are thinking can be done in our community to support people who are most at risk of entering the criminal justice system and possibly preventing that from happening, because that's where we need to be focused, I think.
Yeah.
I wasn't the only person there. Lee, you were there, obviously. Trent Deckard attended and Jeff McKim was there as well. So, it was good.
I think we heard a lot of really good ideas about treatment, how to incorporate it into the justice system, and how to use treatment to keep people out of the justice system and to avoid recidivism. So it was a very helpful meeting to hear people's ideas about those things.
I think I missed that invitation.
All right.
Did everyone on the committee get it except for me? Did you get it?
I don't believe
Judge
so.
Crothy and Judge Fawcett, did you get it?
I don't think they invited the judges.
I believe they invited the commissioners and the council, and I did comment to them that it would be a really good idea for them to talk to the judges. So hopefully they'll follow up on that. Oh, and Judge Crothy, you have Crothy, okay.
Crothy. First of all, I'd like to say, I just have a question. Peter, since I think you took the pictures, but was there natural light throughout the whole jail, or just that part where they keep them for 72 hours?
No, there was natural light in every single cell block. There was natural light in the booking area. There was natural light in that garage area where people are dropped off. The only space where I think there wasn't natural light, I think, was in the central hallway where the staff were walking. So outside of the secure perimeter, but I think everywhere else there was natural light.
Okay. I really like that. And I think if we were to build anything, we definitely should think about that.
Yeah, and-
Also, Lee said that they change their ruling sometimes, but I just want to reiterate that the Supreme Court is basing that on the rights that people have under the Constitution to face-to-face confrontation. So I don't anticipate them changing that ruling. So, thank you.
Well, that will just be another problem for us to solve.
And since you shared that at this meeting, that you received a lot of information about ways to help with recidivism or programming, is that something that you'd be willing to share with the rest of us, either in an email or?
So we asked for follow-up emails on the collective note-taking that was done. It was done on flip charts. And I did receive a follow-up email. I need to go back and look and see if it had those notes in it. I
don't think I got one.
but yeah, I'm not sure
Um,
that was the intent of the follow-up email. I can check.
And
But
they
if
al-
I've got something, I'll definitely share it. I just need to see what the, what the follow-up was. I'm looking now.
They also had a very informed, well-done presentation. And they were going to send us the slides from that also, which we can make available.
And I'm also happy and open to hearing anyone else's thoughts who was present at the committee, just to, as we're making decisions, it's always helpful to have additional information to be the most informed. So if you could share that.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, that. And of course, we're hoping to get additional information from our contract with Allison and various other things that are going on. So now I skipped around so much that, yes. Kate, you were also, I'm not going to put you on the spot again. You were also at the Chambers panel on justice reform, which took place last Wednesday. And I was one of the panel members, and it was it was very well attended. They actually had sold out, even though you had to pay $20 for a seat. And big segments of the community were there. But of course, it was a whole lot of the business community. And this is a topic that they're very concerned about, really want to be involved in. And I got the feeling that they're very supportive of our efforts. And so I think it was a great occasion to kind of get more of the community involved, more of the community aware of what we're doing. You were there also, Jen, weren't you?
And I was gonna say, I was looking for my notes because I took a bunch of notes and I don't know what I did with them, so I apologize for that. But again, as we've said here in these types of settings, and even tonight, the general synopsis of what I got from that discussion was the whole efforts of transparency and collaborative efforts. There was lots of conversations about that and lots of conversation with making sure that our community is involved, stakeholders, whether they're county or a city, I'll just say it, is something that is necessary. So that's one thing that stood out to me. I will say there was another alarming thing that was said, and I don't know if you even have I wrote it down. I think it was like maybe 1,000. So correct me if I'm wrong, but in 2021, there was talks of suicide watches that the jail had. And to hear that number was very high was sickening, which is again, lets me know that again, when folks go into our facilities, whether that is whatever the case is, jail also can do harm while people are in there. And I think that was something that registered a lot with me and has sat with me a lot from last Tuesday, which also, lets me think about here when we talk about our guiding principles. And I know and understand that that's, we went to the facility in Ohio and we're talking about that. But one of the biggest things that we have on our guiding principles is treatment as a priority over incarceration. And if we truly believe that, then, we definitely want to work and get the numbers down, because one is way too many. So that's, I have lots of thoughts, but, that's it.
I think you bring up a really good point, and I think if we can, I know it's late for this meeting, but perhaps the next time we meet, focus less on the jail and more on our directives, as kind of stated in the principles.
I'm glad you.
I think that's a good idea.
I was gonna say, that was actually, I don't know if we were gonna have closing comments or what, but I'm just gonna be honest, since we're talking about transparency and collaboration, it's been really difficult to listen to this conversation this evening, and in a multitude of ways. And I wouldn't be myself as a public servant to say those things, and hearing things from folks, whether it's being in the community, whether it's me coming to this meeting, or whether it's, messages I received during meetings and whatnot. But it's been really difficult to listen to the conversation, because again, as that guiding principle is the first thing, treatment over incarceration, it really it doesn't feel that way right now. And I've said this in private, and also will say it again in public. It's just, it's weird to me, for lack of better terms, to keep having these conversations. And I know we have to have them. And these are things that I know that we have to do. And I appreciate that. And these are hard conversations that we have to have. But it still settles very uneasily to me when we, I think we're all on the same page, at least I hope we are, in terms of treatment over incarceration. And I think the folks that care in our cages is something that they're talking about as well. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to go to that because I had a prior engagement that I couldn't get out of. But it's sitting on my spirit. And again, I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't say that. It's just it's not sitting well with me. And I think I would love to see for our next meeting that we balance this conversation out in terms of making sure that we are truly talking about treatment facility, because as it's been said before, state of Indiana, we all know with lots of things that happen in the state of Indiana, their intentions, and I hope that they have really great and good intentions. But we are Monroe County, like we can do these things and we don't have to necessarily rely on the state. We do, but I think we can be the beacon and progressive enough for us to do those things. So it's just, if my face has been funny during this meeting, it has, because my spirit has not really been settling with conversations that I've had in this meeting.
Thank you. And at this point, I think we should shift over to public comment. We'll have 10 minutes for that, and each speaker can speak for 3 minutes. And there's a microphone like right here if you would like to come up. So anyone who has anything to say to us, please come up.
We're going to scoot over and give them the end.
Oh, okay, good.
I also didn't know about the chamber event. And I just wish that those would go out to the committee. If I missed it, I apologize, but I know I like to go to as many of those as I can so I can hear all the information. So just as an aside,
Okay, yeah, we'll make sure
didn't
that
want to
we
take
do
up the
that.
time.
That's quite
And
all right.
if you could please give us your name, and are you a Monroe County resident?
I'm a Monroe County resident. My name is Linda Webb. And I am the jail and liaison for Unchained Ministries. We go into jails and prisons all over the state. I work with probation, parole, and work one for the whole state, providing information as to who is hiring that hires felons. The biggest problem that I'm running into is number one, Docs Pop and my case should not be available to the public. I have had situations where people get jobs, they're doing well, getting promotions. Other people look them up on my case and then start making fun of them at work. Excuse me? The other thing is transitional housing.
Yes.
People get out of jail and prison and they have no place to live. Why do you think there's so many homeless? You know, when the hospital was, the new one was built, I reached out to the mayor and said, Bloomington Hospital, the old one would be perfect transitional housing. It had medical facility. It had different floors for different situations. There was room for them to learn the cooking and cafeteria stuff, computers, you know, the whole 9 yards, so they could get jobs and then get their funds built up, you know, so they could rent a place. But it is almost impossible to rent a place in Bloomington if you have a felony. I mean, at this point, I have people that are constantly, I've got one right now, just got out of prison on Thursday. Where am I going to go? You know, and so I'm making phone calls and driving places and, you know, taking pictures of signs and calling and so forth. That is the one thing. As a mom, a grandma, great grandma, etc. If it was my kid, let me tell you, you do not want to go up against me. You know, and so as far as I'm concerned, they're all my kid. And I got to help them. And is anything being considered for transitional housing with the new facility?
Absolutely. We've been talking about that right from the beginning. We haven't quite determined how we want to approach it, if it would be best to actually have a facility in that same area, or what Eve Hill actually recommends is scattered throughout the town so that people integrate more. And
well, you were talking about the property behind Catalent.
That
would make a great transitional housing.
Yes.
You know, and you said affordable housing. It depends on who you talk to, what affordable housing is.
I am very well aware of that.
Yes. I go to places, I knock on doors, and that new Atlas on the 17th, $900 a bedroom.
Yeah.
What's a family going to do?
I
have families reaching out.
And yes.
You know, we've got 3 kids. You know, we can't afford what they're charging.
I agree with you, and that's yet a separate problem that government has to work on.
But that's what is also dealing with the transitional housing.
Yes, and as I said,
they have to get jobs, get money saved up for deposits and rent and utilities before they can move on.
I'm sorry, and I just want to give other people a chance
I
to
get
talk.
carried away.
Well,
I'm really passionate about it. So
I'm glad you.
share.
Yes, thank you very much.
Hi, Debbie Fish. I was here last time. I also went to the CARE, Not Cages meeting. I also went to the luncheon put on by the chamber, and they were all really interesting. We're checking right now. We'll make sure emails get out again, and with the slideshow, because we've been trying to figure that out while we sat back there. What you referred to as the charts that we made were really excellent because they were really out of the box thinking and very broadly. And I want to recommend this book, Defund Fear, because we keep trying to fix the same old thing. And we've got to look at it with new eyes. And I don't think we can do that just sitting here with what our own experiences are. So I just would like to see a broadening of our own perspectives on everything. So this is by Zach Norris. And it's really good. It will help you to see that what the history is of incarceration and why it's built around fear and not been built around prevention and treatment. And the only other thing I wanted to say is I'm not sure when a new jail would open. So we got to live with what's over there. And I went to a high school that is now almost 60 years old, and it is in pristine shape. So my question is, how do we get this one looking better and livable in the meantime? That has to happen. It cannot keep looking the way it is right now. So why wasn't it maintained at a better standard?
That's something that's happened over 30 years, I believe, and most of us weren't around, so it's a little hard to say. Do you have anything to say about that, Sam?
Well, there's a lot of difference between a high school and a jail.
Yes.
You know, one, the type of people that are there, and a jail is 24/7, 365. There's always people there. There's always activity, movement. So it's a little different. It's comparing apples to oranges.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to join us?
Hi, guys. My name is Misty James. I am a community member. I work with New Leaf, New Life. I also work with Courage to Change Sober Living. I've also been in the jail approximately, I won't even say how many times, but I suffered from substance misuse disorder. I was arrested on, I have no crimes against like people. Mine were like trespassing, so I was often in and out of there. Although I was never treated bad in the jail, I was treated well. It was just like a revolving door for me. So like I got, it was a community that came together outside of the jail that, supported me. She's here on Zoom. I got Judge Fawcett. Judge Fawcett was the first judge to ever say, okay, maybe you want to go to treatment. So she gave me the option to go to treatment. The last time I was arrested was May 8th, 2019. I've never been arrested again. The first time that I was offered safety and security, I got better. And then I moved from Amethyst House to Courage to Change Sober Living, which has up to a 2-year program. At the time I went there, it was up to a 2-year program. And I learned a foundation of how to like live, because this had been going on for decades with me. I learned how to like survive in the community, right? I think that community resources are hugely helpful because I'd like to know personally, what's the average day in our county jail? And then at that time, people don't stay there forever. So what do we do past incarceration? What do we do to support them? And, I slept in a tent behind Pet Boys approximately 3 years. And that was, and before that, I was just homeless on the street. And now, because outside of the jail organizations like New Leaf, New Life, like Courage to Change Sober Living, I have my own house. I'm a productive member of society. I go to work. I play with my kids and my birds. I do normal things. So like, what can we do as a community to help folks who are coming out of incarceration? Because most of the people who are in jail right now are not going to stay there, and they're going to need help when they leave. So that's like where my concern is.
Yes, thank you very much. That's actually quite inspiring. It would be nice if that could always be the outcome, although maybe gotten to a little more easily.
I have concerns of a question about something that I didn't hear, possibly I missed it, and that was communication with families from what kind of technology is really available to them and how can we reduce the cost of that? Because I think our focus is on the facility, but as you do that, I hope you write in ways to consider keeping the family involved with as much as possible when appropriate. Sometimes it's not. And I'd also just like to charge you all with considering this rehabilitation instead of punishment. I've volunteered in the jail. Felt like I was being suspected always of doing something wrong. And I'd like us to look at the people who come in to help and know that their hearts are in the right place. They're not trying to traffic and do things that are not allowed. And that the staff be trained always with treating people with dignity. You'll get a better response if they're treated with dignity. And I didn't, in my experience, always see that. Sometimes I did, and it was a beautiful thing. And so I just would like that to be written in from the beginning. Let's see what we can do to treat people with dignity, those who volunteer as well as the staff. Thank you.
Thank you. That's something that I've also considered to be extremely important. And our Youth Services Bureau actually does a very good job with working with families. And we're hoping to include them to help us figure out that aspect of things.
Hi.
Hi, I'm afraid you'll have to be the last person
That's fine. I'll make it quick.
Okay.
My name's Marilyn Grimes. I'm from this community for all my life. I was incarcerated. I got in recovery. In 2008, I got arrested. And so I did go to prison. When I came home, wasn't my goal to do sober living, but I seen a lot. And so in 2016, myself and another person started Courage to Change Sober Living. We have 2 men's houses, 2 women's houses. I see that we have applications come in constantly. We have online applications. I know we have at least 20 to 30 a month. The government's putting a lot of money into treatment. 30 days treatment does nothing. So all these people are going to treatment and then they have no place to go. And if we could put some more money into having sober living where they can have a whole year to change what's happening in their life, to learn how to, a lot of the clients now are younger people. They've started out in addiction. They don't know how to live life. They don't know what to do. And they just need someone to help them. The state has Recovery Works funding for felonies that pays $8,000 for housing. That gives them a year of assistance. They have to work when they come to our place within 2 weeks of coming to us. So, they absolutely get into a structured lifestyle and learn the things that need to be learned. And coming straight out of jail and then being put on the streets, our houses are in different areas, Highland Village, South Rogers, they're in neighborhoods. We have good neighborhood policies. The people that live with us actually learn how to be good neighbors. People don't even know we're sober living because our clients, that are living there are changing what they're doing and they're proud of what they're doing. They're actually, so, I know it sounds like I'm trying to help our organization and it's not really that. I really just think funding needs to go to sober living for people coming out of jail. We have drug court, reentry court. We have a lot of clients that are doing those kind of programs. And I think it's needed, but they also need a place to go.
I really appreciate from Courage to Change that I have several litigants doing family law case, and I'm a family law judge, where they can exercise parenting time at those locations. And that has been a great way for them to get back in contact with their children So I wanted to say how much I appreciate that that can happen there.
Yes.
That's been very helpful.
Yeah, I think we're going to probably want to have a lengthy discussion with your organization
We love it.
so
Yeah.
that we can.
Could I ask one question?
Yes,
Would you
please.
mind? So you said you get about 20 to 30 applications a month.
Mhm.
What is your wait time? Like, do you have a wait list or?
Well, because we allow our clients to stay a year, we don't have a big turnover. So we have 14 men and 10 women right now that are in our houses. We're all state certified houses. So they've been inspected by the state. And so if we had, if you had a bigger place and you had more oversight, then more people could have a year to get on their feet. That's why we don't have that many beds available, because if they get in there and they're doing good, they're going to stay with us. And we give them the opportunity to relapse and still not just kick them out. The courts work with them. We work hand in hand with the courts. So we're in contact with community corrections, the judges, probation, so our goal is to also give them the accountability. We have case managers and, there's a contract they sign. And so that gives them accountability to keep doing the right thing. But if they slip, they're not going to just get thrown out onto the streets either. So.
Very good. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for listening to me. I appreciate it.
And
I did have one more quick
Yes.
question, just for us here on the committee. I don't know how the emails from that our committee's page is going, because I actually tested it to see if we would get it, because I was under the impression that everybody that's listed in the committee would get the email.
that's what it was supposed to
Okay.
be.
Because I sent a little test last week
And
and I still haven't received it. So I'm afraid if we have members of the public that are reaching out, because I was surprised not to hear from public, then we have something that needs to be looked at ASAP.
Yeah, I'll certainly check into that.
Okay.
That's unfortunate.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone, and we are now adjourned.